Evolutionary geology in question. The geologic column is simply an idea, not a uniform column of rocks together at every location. Gaps and reversals of this imaginary sequence characterize real rock formations and sediment deposits. To see the entire geologic column in its proposed sequence, you'd have to traverse the globe. So-called Precambrian and Paleozoic strata exist at the Grand Canyon. Mesozoic stratum exists in eastern Arizona. Tertiary formations are clearly visible in New Mexico, etc. Every conceivable contradiction to the so-called geologic sequence is found. Anomalous fossils in the wrong stratigraphic order are conveniently explained away to credence evolutionary geology. Fossils found too low in a column before they supposedly evolved are coined stratigraphic leaks. Specimens found too high have supposedly been reworked. Often huge stratum chunks are in the wrong stratigraphic order. An example of such upside-down conditions is Glacier National Park's block of Precambrian limestone, supposedly 1 billion years old, sitting atop Cretaceous shale, supposedly only 100 million years old. Fossil plants, animals, and tree trunks, petrified wood, were found vertically through many stratigraphic layers, refuting the notion that these sedimentary layers formed over eons. The evolutionary model requires ages to cover several vertical feet. But for fossilization, subjects need rapid burial before rotting away and escaping preservation. Sudden and extreme hydraulic pressure from massive floods creating geologic upheavals for rapid burial would explain this, and natural wonders such as the Grand Canyon. Numerous factors likely formed a present Earth, including continental drift, meteor impact, and even instantaneous creation, but the idea that geology demonstrates evolution unravels upon close examination. A hydraulic sorting action may account for why fossils of like shape, size, and weight tend to be found on the same level as opposed to being of the same evolutionary and geologic phase. Subscribing to the biblical flood account is unnecessary. Flood legends were pervasive throughout antiquity, with Zithuteros, Pithru, and Deucalon as similar heroes to Noah, giving core essentials of cataclysmic flooding universal witnesses. Although the so-called Great Flood is dubious, there is much evidence for torrential local floods. Also, many written records throughout history consist of eyewitness accounts fitting the description of dinosaurs, along with drawings and artwork depicting dinosaurs. These predate paleontology's relatively recent extrapolation of dinosaurs from fossils by thousands of years. Dinosaurs having lived contemporaneously with humans utterly contradicts the neo-Darwinist construct. Evolutionary models are self-defeating. Earth's quintessential evolutionary genesis, innumerous volcanoes, is extremely antithetical to life. Beneficial attributes of volcanoes heating water, creating land masses, and rich soil is dwarfed by deadly lava and explosions. Volcanoes have more destructive force than atomic bombs. Note that. The beneficial steam and carbon dioxide they release is countermanded by belching carbon monoxide, sulfur dioxide, and tons of ash which block out the sun, sustainer of all life. Evolution's staple, fish into frogs before becoming mammals, is backwards. Besides subject to being stepped on, frogs are solitary creatures with limited mobility. They have many predators, and they're no improvement over fish. Survival of the fittest would necessitate fish evolving into apex predators such as sharks, and humans evolving into vampires and werewolves. Primates evolving into Homo sapiens would be backwards in that primates are pound for pound 3 times stronger. Other primates. So-called environmental niches or glitches would necessarily be backwards for eons. Besides, there is no one set direction life forms could take to increase survivability without a downside. The obvious advantage bigger animals have over smaller ones by topping the food chain and dominating their environment is countermanded by lessened capacity to produce offspring and having a much harder time foraging to supply their mass. Elephants often starve to death while, outside of humans, small bugs rule the world. An ability in one area denotes a disability in another. The necessary basic structure of either land, sea, or air dominating animals makes them incompetent in the other two environments. For example, birds have largely hollow bones, conducive to flying, which makes them weak land creatures. In contrast, the solid, thick bone structure of dominant land creatures prevents flying. When one populace dominates another, the other group tends to become indignant and retaliate. Humankind is now so mentally and physically advanced, we have the technological capacity via nuclear weapons of wiping ourselves out several times over. And especially Vladimir Putin. he's up to no good. And if survival of the fittest were true, why would animals evolve into creatures which are subservient to man instead of a Linus dynasty or tiny plants evolving into colorful flowers instead of all giant sequoia trees? The answer is clear. Life was created to declare God's glory. Evolution's mechanism? As stated earlier, life forms may change over time, but only within the parameters of their gene pool, however wide that may be. So can one life form affect the gene pool of another when it cannot even alter its own gene pool? Can non-living matter create life and intelligence when intelligent life cannot? There's a set method and apparatus to precisely measure gravitational pull, electromagnetic waves, wind speed, light intensity, chemical composition, and so on. But this supposed effect of evolution has no concrete cause. Although creationism lacks a natural cause, creationists believe life originated from a supernatural God who is beyond the natural order. Since neo-Darwinists insist that evolution is part of nature, they must show by what process it works. Something in the physical realm without cause or process cannot exist. Otherwise, it's like cars evolving into airplanes. And there's no evidence that the ability to self-replicate has anything to do with the ability to evolve. Otherwise, we'd have to suppose that self-replicating robots would evolve. And creatures would have to first evolve the ability to self-replicate, which would originally be non-existent. Time and achievement. I do not believe in the existence of time, like I said before. Therefore, my argument is not that there is not enough time. I argue that time lacks relevance. As stated earlier, time is not a scientific fact. It is a mathematical formula describing the ratio of one event to another, such as x decays y amount per z times Earth revolves around the sun. Now, with x perpetually frozen at absolute zero, it would never decay whatsoever. Hence, it would be timeless. So the reverse, speeding up an inherent generative process a millionfold, should produce a desired result instantly, such as people becoming vampires, werewolves, etc., apex predators. If that seems ludicrous, consider the time factor in other realms of achievement. Some extraordinary men have trained for 20 years to lift 200 kilograms overhead or hit a baseball 170 meters, doing so within seconds. Yet training for 60 years would produce no examples of such achievement, because their bodies be worn out and couldn't no longer do it. Nor would taking an hour to lift or hit produce achievement. Again, be squashed with death. Rather, it would render achievement impossible. Extreme examples of taking undue time to achieve anything would be the supposed evolution of simple, innocuous species into more complex, dominant ones, such as frogs into humans. Think about it. This would allow innumerous chances to be devoured by predators, decimated by disease, have fatal accidents, and acquire genetic damage, destroying even the continuation of the self-same creature. Besides, macroevolution would be far more radical than human into vampire, werewolf, or creature of your choice. Therefore, it's utter fantasy. Stay tuned for part